Tom, this Xavier team is unique. They're very special. They're so hard to defend against because they don't have any one key guy. They're very unselfish. This is a coach's dream. Now, UMass is very different. They have two guys that can score over 20 points a game. Two of the leading scorers in the Atlantic 10 Conference in Gary Forbes and Ricky Harris. So when you watch these guys today, you're going to see Ricky Harris coming off a great game against St. Joe's where he scored 30 points. What an amazing turnaround in just 1 year between his freshman and sophomore season. And how about Gary Forbes? I think he's a pro prospect. The transfer from Virginia can take you to the paint, can score in the lane, but can score away from the basket. These two guys are going to be important for Xavier in order to defend here this afternoon.
Well, it's going to be a great matchup. It's the individual work of the UMass Minutemen against the team concept of the Musketeers. And it's up next. A quick turnaround here at the Mullins Center. Last night they had a hockey game, and today, this afternoon, they've got basketball. It's Xavier against UMass, and Sean Miller, the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers. He's got his team off to a 16-4 start, 4-1 in the A-10, and he has done a very nice job in his 4 seasons as a head coach for the Musketeers. And this is the lineup that he'll send out there this afternoon, and it includes 2 transfers, Drew Lavender and C.J. Anderson. Both have had a major impact. Lavender has been outstanding since the middle of last year for the Musketeers. Meanwhile, for the UMass Minutemen, well, they start, John Griffin, with the work of Chris Lowe, their point guard.
What a terrific point guard. He's the epitome of a point guard. This is going to be a great matchup here this afternoon between Lavender and Lowe. You're going to see 2 of the best point guards in the conference.
Well, and Travis Ford should know something about point guards because that's what he was during his college days, and in his 3rd season at UMass, he's already won 50 games, and he's kind of changed the texture around here, and he's made it an up-tempo style of play for this squad. And that squad right there, they enjoy it. As Dante Milligan, one of the captains, has a few final words for his teammates before he heads them out towards center court. There's Milligan, who's made the starts over the last few ball games in the middle, and defensively has played very well. This is the 19th meeting between these 2 schools, and the games have been rather entertaining. The last one, of course, last January, and Xavier won that one. So here we go. Jamie Lucky is the referee. He's settling in center court, tosses it up, and the tip is controlled a little awkwardly by the UMass Minutemen, and the Musketeers come out with man-to-man defense.
Well, no surprise there, Tom, because UMass has, they're going to try to score, obviously, with Forbes and Ricky Harris. They're going to be the guys that are going to take most of the shots. But Xavier is known as one of the best defensive teams in the conference. They play terrific man-to-man defense. Did a great job their last game against Dayton on Brian Roberts.
It's a beautiful cut to the basket by Chris Lowe. He's explosive, and he has the first points of the afternoon. See the Musketeers record, 16-4 on the season. They've won 8 of 9, including the game that John Griffin talked about against the Dayton Flyers. So the Musketeers, their first possession of the afternoon, a little surprising, a little bit of a matchup zone by the Minutemen.
Yeah, you're going to see them try to really make sure that Xavier has to work for every basket.
Lavender for 3 outside, no good. Harris with the rebound.
They want to push the ball up the court, but Tom, we talked about some of the adjustments that Travis Ford has made. He's going to, most of the time, a full-court pressing kind of defense, not necessarily half-court zone.
Here's a Lavender explosive to the hoop, and a beautiful move right under Chris Lowe's defense. So game tied at 2, and it's back and forth already. Harris tries to answer, and he gets a nice, friendly Mullins center spin off the rim.
Both teams are pushing the ball up the court, and you can see the talent level of both of the point guards. Lavender pushing the ball down the court. Chris Lowe scored the first field goal for the Minutemen. And how about Ricky Harris? He just really plays well in that fast-paced transition offensive game that Travis Ford has instituted this year.
Harris, who sat a lot of last year, got some time, averaged just under 5 points per game, now is a mainstay from a scoring standpoint. As C.J. Anderson gets on the board, the transfer from Manhattan, who's also had an impact on the Xavier team.
Absolutely. There's 6 guys that can make a difference for the Musketeers, he being one of them.
Forbes probably pressed that shot a little bit too much, but Milligan gets the rebound. They swing it up top for Gaffney. His jumper's no good. There's a couple of guys that are important to this UMass squad. The guys that are sort of on the border from a scoring standpoint. Gaffney and Etienne Brower, both transfers from BU. When they score and they play well offensively, UMass plays well.
Exactly. I was talking to some of the UMass folks, and they were telling me that when Brower did not score in the St. Joe's game, I think he was 0 for 8 from the field, it made quite a difference because he's averaging about 10 points a game.
There's our first foul of the day as Love gets the rebound, goes right back up, and he's bumped hard. So he's going to go to the free throw line for 2. Gary Forbes called for his first foul. Forbes, the senior from Brooklyn, New York, and he played 2 years at Virginia under Pete Gillen. When Pete Gillen was relieved of his duties as the head coach, that's when Gary Forbes transferred here to UMass. So to the free throw line is Philadelphia native Jason Love, who's a 58% free throw shooter.
But what a difference he's made in terms of his foul shooting percentage since he's become a starter, Tom. It's gone from about 47% to over 70%. And some of the folks at the Xavier think that he's a candidate for most improved in the conference. He lost a lot of weight in the offseason. He's become a very good offensive rebounder.
Well, he makes 1 of 2. It's 5-4 Musketeers. Early on here in the first half, Xavier ranked number 23 in the most recent poll. Milligan kicks it nicely out to Lowe for 3, and it's good, right corner. This is a UMass team that is 7th in shooting percentage outside the arc in the A-10. So 7-5, UMass on top.
I think Chris Lowe is one of those guys that could make a difference because the Musketeers defensively are going to concentrate on Forbes and Harris. But if Lowe can have a big game offensively, I know he's averaging in double figures, but if he can get to 18 to 20 points, he could certainly make a difference as well.
Shot clock is down to 10 seconds. Anderson goes inside for Brown. Nice move and a nice touch. It doesn't fall in, though. The putback by Love. It's there, and he's fouled. And he's going to visit the free throw line for a second time.
This is, again, where Love makes a difference. He's a terrific offensive rebounder. And this was a concern of the Minutemen coming into this game, whether or not they could rebound well enough against Xavier. This time, the Musketeers get 2 or 3 shots. And if the Minutemen are going to win this game, Tom, they're not going to be able to allow second and third chance scoring opportunities for Xavier.
Now, John, Love will be in the game at times with Josh Duncan, but a lot of times they'll split the duties as the 5 for the Xavier squad. And Duncan's going to check in right now for Love. And Duncan is a very good player. He's going to be a 1,000-point scorer. But they say that Love is probably a little more aggressive defensively.
Yeah, I think if you ask the coaches of the Musketeers, they would like to see Duncan rebound the basketball better. He's a terrific perimeter player. He's a difficult matchup for the Minutemen. But again, one of the things they really want him to improve is his rebounding.
Ricky Harris from the right corner inside to Gaffney. Whistle blows and a foul called underneath. And that foul is going to go against Ricky Harris. It's an offensive foul.
Good team defense there by the Musketeers. You can see how quickly they close down on him. And again, they know that Harris wants to drive to the basket, but Derek Brown did a terrific job getting his body in position and taking the charge.
Ricky Harris from Baltimore, Maryland, at 30 points, as John said, against St. Joseph's the other night, and that lost by UMass, but 26 of those points came in the second half. Not surprising, since UMass scored more than 60 points in the second half of that game.
And I think 16 came in the last 9 minutes.
Offensive foul on Josh Duncan, an illegal screen. So Travis Ford's squad is down by just 1, nearly 4 minutes into this game. And boy, we were told before the ball game that Luke Bonner would not play, and Bonner just entered the ball game for the UMass Minutemen. He hurt his foot in the game against St. Joseph's. As we said before the ball game, they said, nah, I don't think he's going to go, but there he is. He's laced up and ready to go. Well,
Travis Ford had talked about maybe playing some other guys like Papa Lowe in his place, and giving some minutes to some other guys like Matt Hill, a freshman.
Here's Forbes, long-range 3, and air ball. That's the kind of shot that sometimes Travis Ford cringes at when Gary Forbes takes it from that deep. But he has the ability and the range at times to make that kind of shot. Early on, Xavier holding on to a 1-point lead over the Minutemen.
Next week in the Best Damn Sports Show, period. We're bringing the heat to the Arizona desert for the Best Damn Super Bowl Bash.
Well, into our first media timeout. Both teams are shooting well. Xavier leads at 8-7. Let's take a look at the keys to today's ball game. First for the Musketeers, and I think that first one is really on everybody's list of what to do against the Musketeers.
It seems so obvious, Tom. You have to somehow stop Harris and Ford, averaging both over 20 points a game. And if you're Xavier, you got to bring intensity on the road. They didn't do it against Temple. They have to do it here in the Mullen Center. If you're UMass, you got to play focused defense across the board. You have to defend 5 players, not just 1 or 2, and you want to try to dictate the tempo. You want this to be an 80-point game, not a 60-point game.
Xavier, though, seems like the kind of team that can play that kind of style, too.
Yeah, I think they can adjust. They scored in 2 games this year against Virginia and Kansas State over 100 points a game, so they're very capable of playing at a faster pace.
Well, you saw the numbers. Both teams with 3 made field goals so far in the early going of this ball game. Duncan to the left side for Stanley Burrell, who has not gotten on track just yet. Inside to Josh Duncan. Nice move to the basket. And the shot rolls off the left side of the rim. Forbes with the rebound.
You've seen already now UMass change its defense from that half-court zone to man-to-man, and I think you're going to see that combination throughout the afternoon. They may even throw in a press from now and then, because they really do like to create that up-tempo.
Brower in the ball game for the first time. He finds Bonner for 3. No good. Rebound by Anderson. He loses control, but then gets it back nicely. So Lavender pressing the issue, bringing it up the floor. He does not have numbers, but he still uses a nice crossover to the basket. He draws the foul.
Coach Sean Miller gives Drew Lavender a lot of freedom to push the ball up the court and create. And this time it's just mano a mano. Lavender against Lowe. And Lavender just takes the ball to the basket and draws the foul. He didn't really wait for his offensive teammates to kind of fill the lanes. He saw an opportunity and he tried to create.
The transfer from Oklahoma played 2 years for the Sooners. Averaged over 11 points per game for those 2 years. This is his 2nd season with Xavier. He was looking for a place to transfer to, and I think he wanted to stay close to home, and obviously from Columbus, Ohio, and it's worked out well for him. He makes 1 of 2.
The great thing about Drew Lavender this year is he's so unselfish. He's made his teammates better. He's a guy, Tom, that could score 20 points a game, but he's sacrificing himself to distribute the basketball. The game against Dayton, I think he had 3 points, but some of the Minutemen, or excuse me, some of the Musketeers had told me that he was happy for everybody because they won the game, and even though he only scored 3 points.
Harris for 3, a little long. Brower with the rebound. Gets it back to Ricky Harris. Into the paint, no good. Bonner with the rebound. Active early, Luke Bonner. That's a pretty nice putback for a guy that's got a bad wheel.
And a guy that's probably more known for his 3-point shooting than he is his offensive rebounding.
Stanley Burrell to the free throw line. Here's Duncan for 3. No good. He actually got the team off on the right note from 3-point line against Dayton. B.J. Raymond with a nice fake, and his 16-footer is off the mark. So game tied at 9. We head toward the 14-minute mark here in the first half. Dante Jackson, the freshman, with a nice steal. Jackson in, running the point for Drew Lavender, although Stanley Burrell will help out with those responsibilities as well. It's not a big lineup for the Musketeers, and they have that ability where they don't have to go big. Duncan is the tallest guy on the floor for them, and Stanley Burrell called for the offensive foul. Burrell, who is 16th right now all-time in scoring at Xavier, tied with James Posey.
Burrell's a terrific offensive player, but you got to give credit right now to Ricky Harris as a defender. He's the guy we talked about in terms of how much he's scoring this season, but that's as good a defensive possession as you can have on a guy like Stanley Burrell.
So Harris will get a breather. He'll step out of the ball game. Gary Correa, number 11, is in. So is Matt Glass, number 33. And Glass was one of those guys whose numbers or whose minutes were scheduled to increase if Bonner couldn't play today. Brower, clear path to the basket, tries a slam, but he's cut off by Derek Brown. But Brown is evolving into a fantastic offensive and defensive player. Here's Burrell with the floater, no good. Whistle blows and a foul called under the basket. That foul is going to go against Lowe.
This is just terrific penetration, but how about the help defense by Derek Brown, only a sophomore, having a great sophomore season. He's averaging over double figures, but again, he's going to have some highlight reel material here this afternoon. He can really get off his feet, Tom.
He had a dunk the other night, John, against Dayton that was just picture perfect. It was a poster-like dunk from the baseline off to the left.
He has a pro build. He's a young player. He's just going to fill out a little bit more. but he has a prototypical professional build.
Glass with a bad pass up top, but it rolls out of bounds. I'm not sure if Bonner's foot caused him to get a slow start after that pass, but Travis Ford's team has actually done a decent job holding on to the ball so far in this game against a Xavier team that's very good defensively. 13 minutes left to play in the first half. Game tied at 9. UMass 2-2 in the Atlantic 10. 2 losses came against St. Joseph's. Xavier's 1 loss in the A-10 came against a very good Temple team. Fran Dunphy's got those guys playing some good basketball.
He sure does. I mean, you saw the game last night, St. Joe's Temple, and you mentioned that St. Joe's were fortunate to win.
Here's Love down low, and an offensive foul called down low against Jason Love. That's the second foul on Jason Love. So Sean Miller is going to have to manage his minutes as this first half moves on.
Well, that could hurt a little bit because he's such a good offensive rebounder. But I like the fact that he made such a strong move in the low post. A lot of ball screens here by UMass. You're going to see that all afternoon.
Good idea by Forbes, with the pass is cut off by Derek Brown. Nice crossover, athletic move to the hoop, and he's fouled by Matt Glass. He doesn't get the shot to fall, but he's going to get 2 free throws.
And see the versatility there of Derek Brown. He's not just a guy who dunks the basketball. About half of his field goals are dunks. His field goal percentage obviously is so high. But there you saw him put the ball on the floor, push it down, and draw the foul.
From Dayton, Ohio, there's some great recruiting wars that go on between Xavier and Dayton. For the kids in Ohio, Derek Brown from Dayton decided to go about 50 miles to Xavier instead of playing for Brian Gregory and the Flyers.
What's interesting, Tom, even the kids that leave the state seem to find their way back, and both of these clubs over the years have benefited from transfers coming back to the state of Ohio.
Well, Drew Lavender is a case in point for the Musketeers, but so is C.J. Anderson, who is from Cincinnati and went to Winton Woods High School, and he transferred from Manhattan College. Brown's second free throw, no good. And the rebound is controlled by Dante Milligan. Milligan averages about 5 rebounds per game. Transfer from Pittsburgh. Gaffney with the ball up top. Covered by Derek Brown. Boy, great defense by Brown. Into the open floor. Left-handed slam. When he gets into the open floor, you just sit back and watch.
Yeah, you forget about trying to block the shot or fouling him. Just let him have the basket.
Forbes trying to force a shot, and he draws the foul. Adrian Graves is called for that foul. So Gary Forbes is going to get a couple of free throws. But those free throws will take place after our next timeout. Xavier on top by 3, thanks to Derek Brown. Well, the shooting percentages have dipped for both squads, but Xavier's hanging on to a 3-point lead, 12-9. And Musketeers coming off a victory against the Dayton Flyers, and it was an impressive win over Dayton. The margin of victory is never usually that wide for either one of those teams.
One of the great rivalries in college basketball. Anytime these two teams lace it up, this game happened to be at the Cintas Center, and Xavier played just perfect basketball, high-intensity basketball game. And when you look at Xavier so far this year, these stats just jump out at you. Scoring margin, certainly. But how about rebound margin? That's kind of the tough stuff. Free throw percentage is very solid. Really makes a difference in the latter stages of the game. 3-point shooting. But I love that assist-to-turnover ratio. Burrell and Lavender really take care of the basketball.
And you saw Sean Miller next to that graphic, and this was a guy who was a very good point guard in his own way at Pittsburgh, so he likes that assist-to-turnover ratio.
As I remember Sean, I mean, he's a terrific ball handler. And, you know, he would try to make, though, sometimes the spectacular pass. I mean, he was a very, very flashy player, taught by his dad, who was a high school coach in the Pittsburgh area. But I remember Sean coming up, even as a guy who would go around to clinics and teach at camps. He's a terrific, terrific ball handler.
Well, Gary Forbes makes 1 of 2 from the free throw line. So 12-10 the score. Xavier on top, and there's Derek Brown with the take to the hoop, and he's fouled by Dante Milligan. So Derek Brown will get a chance to go back to the free throw line.
Here's Derek Brown again. Tom, he's just taking the ball hard to the basket. You're just seeing Derek Brown step up his game. I mean, you kind of look at the future for this Musketeer basketball program, you think, oh, Derek Brown's back for 2 more seasons. Are you kidding me?
He's a left-handed shooter, and his first free throw is good. On the season, he is close to an 80% free throw shooter. Last year, he was a member of the A-10's all-rookie team. And so far today, he's collected 4 points.
Oh, when you think about the guys that were lost on last year's team, Dolman, Cage, Cole, you thought, is this going to be a rebuilding year for the Musketeers? Not at all. And there's 6 guys coming in the wings, 2 transfers, 4 recruits, with this talented group of guys returning.
And I think the impact of C.J. Anderson has been big this year. Anderson back in the ball game for Xavier. Forbes to the baseline. His pass to the corner hits the bottom of the backboard, and that means it's out of bounds. So the turnover gives Xavier the ball back. Gary Forbes, who, as we said, played at Virginia for 2 years, he'll exit. Matt Glass will check back into the game. Glass was the Mr. Basketball selection in the state of Vermont 2 different times, as he scored over 1,000 points at Mount Mansfield High School in Vermont. Just a freshman. He's averaging under 2 points per game, but he's a 3-point shooter. Brown brings the defense in, throws it out to Duncan for 3, no good, and the rebound is tapped into the hands of Ricky Harris.
This would be a big game for UMass to win, not just because of standing in the Atlantic 10 Conference, but they have not beat a ranked team here since the UConn game in December of 2004.
Glass's 3, no good as it rolls out. And now Lavender trying to push it. He's given some room, and his 3 is good. Drew Lavender, who, as we said, was held in check offensively in the last game because of fouls against Dayton. He did have 5 rebounds in the first half in that game against Dayton. And he gets a 3-pointer there, so it's a 6-point lead for Xavier.
And when you look so far at the distribution of shots for the Musketeers, it's very well balanced. It's so hard to defend this team because you have a guy like Brown who can score, Duncan who can shoot the 3, Lavender who can just penetrate.
Well, Lavender will recognize if they're giving him a couple steps, as you see here, he's just going to pull up and take the 3.
Yeah, that time Chris Lowe decided to kind of step back, make sure that Lavender didn't get in the lane, and Lavender recognized that space and just stopped at the top of the key and knocked down the shot.
See the Musketeers shooting from 3-point land. That leads the Atlantic 10, just over 40%. It's also 17th in the country. And it's been pretty consistent. And, you know, John, as Josh Duncan goes to the free throw line for a 1-on-1, you talked about the number of shots. That's the stat that really jumps out to me. How many shots the 6 guys that are in double digits have taken this year and how close they are to each other?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that Lavender has a lot to say about it because he's distributing the basketball. He's kind of the orchestrator, if you will, of this offense.
Duncan's second free throw is good. Love is going to check in for Josh Duncan. Drew Lavender, as we take a look at his bio blast, we said he transferred from Oklahoma after 2005. He had a slow start to last year's season, was benched for 1 game, and then all of a sudden evolved into the kind of player that the Musketeers thought he would be.
Yeah, and everybody thinks that he's one of the best point guards in college basketball today.
Even at his size, he stands 5 feet 7 inches, but he is strong. P.J. Raymond with the ball up top. 18-10, Xavier on top. They've got some separation now. An 8-point lead is the largest lead of the afternoon. And C.J. Anderson just dropped that ball out of bounds. Anderson, as we mentioned, the transfer from Manhattan. Here's a kid who averaged over 18 points per game at Manhattan as a ineligible, and then he transferred back home to Xavier. How about Luke Bonner? Even with the bad foot, he still takes it to the hoop. He's had 3 aggressive moves in this first half, and we didn't think he was going to play this afternoon.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that really likes to step outside the 3-point line and knock down shots, not necessarily known for going to the basket.
Brower to the hoop, ball knocked away by Raymond. And now the transition by Xavier. They don't have numbers just yet, and Lavender realizes that and pulls it out.
Yeah, good reset, if you will, by Lavender to recognize he was the only guy with the blue jersey pushing the ball down the court.
Raymond for 3, and it's good. Only the second 3 made this afternoon by the Musketeers, but it extends their lead to 11 points. So 21-10 the score. Xavier is on top. Their floor leader has been Drew Lavender this entire year. Boy, Lavender has had himself a good college career.
I just like the way he's been able to balance scoring and distributing the basketball. You saw him penetrate, now you saw him pull up, and he's also got a defensive presence with his ability to pick the other team's pocket. He's one of the best defenders in this league in terms of also stealing the basketball.
Well, you talk about the prototypical point guard. He has collected more than 100 assists in each of the last 3 years, and he's on pace to obviously do that again.
Yeah, he just has the whole package. It's, you know, at 5'8", 9", whatever you want to call it, he just combines all the things that you want in a point guard. He can score, he can penetrate, he can make shots, he finds the open man, he plays defense.
Oh, he's 4th in the league in assists, but he leads the A-10 in that assist-to-turnover ratio, and now his team's got an 11-point lead. Under 10 minutes to play here in the first half from the Mullins Center. Chris Lowe running the offense. Travis Ford just trying to settle things down offensively. Gary Forbes is out of the ball game for the Minutemen. Shot clock is down to 15 for the Minutemen. Lowe recognizes and finds Gaffney for a jumper. No good. A mid-range game. Off the mark as Burrell pulls down the rebound.
So far, Xavier has been able to limit the number of transition basket opportunities for the Minutemen. They're making it more of a half-court game. And Xavier has a chance to set up its half-court defense, which has been very stingy all year long. And you can see that UMass doesn't get easy shots on the offensive end if it's not in transition.
See the field goal numbers so far in this first half. UMass 4 of 17 and 1 for 6 from outside the arc. Here's Gaffney in the paint, pulls in the defense for Brower, and there's a 3. Brower with just the second 3 of the day for UMass.
That was a good offensive set. Inside, outside, throw it in the lane, let the defense collapse, and kick it back out.
So we head toward the 8-minute mark here in the first half. It's safe to say kind of a low-scoring game so far, with UMass collecting just 13 points. They average just under 85 points per game. Lavender a little soft with that 3, but he gets his own rebound. One-handed pass underneath to Josh Duncan, who's fouled going up. So Duncan's going to get 2, and boy, Drew Lavender actually is playing, I think, offensively much better than he did the other day against Dayton.
Well, Tom, I didn't see that game like you did, but obviously I saw the highlights. And this play, though, it's not going to kind of show up in anything other than the stat column as an assist. But the degree of difficulty and the awareness of that one-handed pass kind of in our minds changes the way we look at it, because not every player could make that play.
To have that control and the strength just to grab it with one hand and flip it with the kind of velocity he did underneath the basket.
And the awareness, to be able to see something before the defense even recognizes that it's there.
James Whitford, one of the assistant coaches, talking now to Drew Lavender. James has actually had a big impact on the Xavier program with his recruiting in the state of Ohio. And Duncan makes both of his free throws. So a 10-point lead for the Musketeers. Under 8 minutes to play here in the first half. Gary Forbes back in the game, launches a 3, a little short. And Jackson with the rebound, and a beautiful pass from Graves to a cutting Derek Brown for the slam. Well, the quote from Sean Miller, no one cares about individual accolades. That's why there are 6 different players in double figures, and even with the underclassmen, you can see it, you know, see them kind of feeding off of that concept.
Yeah, very unselfish, aware basketball.
12-point lead for Xavier. Brower, the entry pass to Forbes, backs his way in, tries to force the shot, but he's fouled. So he'll get 2 free throws, and maybe that will unleash Gary Forbes here in the first half. 25-13. We know that Derek Brown, well, he's been unleashed so far in this half. UMass with just 13 points so far in this first half. They trail at 25-13. Travis Ford, though, has changed the tempo of this offense. He went and visited the Phoenix Suns camp to see how they ran their offense, and you can see the difference it's made from one year, John, to the next.
Especially when you look at guys like Ricky Harris. 4 points a game as a freshman, 20 as a sophomore, a 16-point differential, and you can see it across the board. Brower, Forbes, Lowe, and Milligan have all benefited from this up-tempo. Now here's Gary Forbes. Look at him. He is such a tough matchup. When he recognizes that he has an opportunity, he's going to post up his man instead of score from away from the basket. That time he saw an opportunity being guarded by Adrian Graves at 6'4", said, I'm going to take this young guy into the low post and draw a foul.
Well, he's usually a very good free throw shooter, but he has traded makes and misses the last 2 trips to the line. He's 2 for 4 from the free throw line. Xavier on top by 11, 25-14. And a travel called on Dante Jackson as he tried to fight through that man-to-man defense. It looks like UMass is bringing the defense out a little bit more.
Yeah, that's one of their defensive changes. They want to speed up the pace, Tom. This 14 points so far with 7 minutes to go in the first half is not the pace that they want to play. So they need to create some transition scoring opportunities. That time they brought the defense out to half court, tried to create a trap or turnover.
It's almost as if it's the same kind of first half that they had against the St. Joseph's Hawks the other night. Here's Brower for 3. And he had one earlier, but that one rolls in and out. Lavender pushing the offense up the floor. Lavender with a nice crossover against Lowe. Lowe, one of the fastest guys, not only in the A-10, but probably in the country. But just watching Lavender today, he can match him with his foot speed.
I think in the open court, you're absolutely right, Tom. Lavender really can get the ball down the court quickly.
Here's Graves for 3. It's short. Lowe takes out the rebound, brings it up the floor. He doesn't have numbers just yet, so he'll take a 17-footer. No good. Brown with the rebound. The shots just aren't going down right now for the Minutemen.
Good open look, though, for Chris Lowe.
Here's Raymond for 3 off the side of the rim. He'll get his own rebound, though, off the tip. So we head toward the 6-minute mark here in the first half. UMass shooting 22% from the floor. Xavier at 38.9%. And it's a pushing foul called against the Musketeers and Josh Duncan. See the numbers for the Minutemen. 45% from the floor, which is 7th in the A-10 today. They're 5 for 22.
And I think part of the reason is that they're being forced to shoot against a defense that's already set. They're not getting easy baskets in transition. They want to get the ball up the court, and they want to get open shots before the defense is set. That's not happening so far this afternoon.
John, Gary Forbes is 2 for 4 from the free throw line so far this afternoon. He was just walking to the free throw line thinking that he was going to be the shooter. But I was just thinking that if he could get to the free throw line more, maybe that frees him up because he's 0 for 4 from the floor.
Yeah, one of the things in talking to some of the coaches of UMass, they're very happy with the way Gary Forbes is scoring, that they think that he's taking too many shots in order to get those 20 points. Against St. Joe's, for example, he took 24 shots. So they want to see his percentage be better, take fewer shots, still need him to score 20 points.
Well, Brower cuts this lead to single digits with 2 made free throws. There's Gary Forbes' numbers, 2 points, 0 for 4 from the floor. A little different defense now by UMass, and they force the turnover. Lowe to Forbes, one-on-one with Lavender. Beautiful move with his left hand. He can't get the first shot to go down, but his putback is good.
Those are the high percentage shots that Coach Travis Ford wants. This pressure now, the extended defense, is starting to create some havoc here, and it's certainly gotten the crowd into the game, Tom.
Kind of looks like a 1-3-1 half-court press to start, and then they settle back into the 2-3 zone. But they've got a body on guys in this zone. They keep moving guys around. Shot clock is down to 10. Game clock is down to 5:15. Raymond, a long-range 3. Love with the rebound. Lavender thought about pulling up and taking that 3, but he's going to settle things down, and Sean Miller wants to do it himself by calling a timeout. So 5:09 left to play here in the first half, and a little bit of a spurt by UMass, and it's helped out by Gary Forbes on this particular play.
Yeah, an offense created by their defense. Good extended pressure defense. Here's Forbes in transition. He misses the first attempt. He's actually a very good rebounder, and rebounds his own miss and finishes with a deuce.
Yeah, he's averaging over 7 rebounds per game to go along with those 20.5 points. And Gary Forbes, an interesting story. Not only did he play 2 years at the University of Virginia out of Brooklyn, New York, but also this past summer he played for the Panamanian national team. He is actually from Panama. He was raised in the States, but his dad worked on the Panama Canal, so he lived there for his first 10 years or so before he moved to the States. He still has family that lives in Panama. In fact, when the Panamanian team was put together, they trained in Panama, and he saw his brother for the first time, and I guess they said in more than a decade.
there's some great stories when you look at the bios of each of these players, and Barry Forbes is a good example of a player born in another country. And even we'll get into this if he gets in the game. Papa Lowe plays for UMass, was recently married in a ceremony in Senegal.
Foul called away from the ball against Ricky Harris. It's an elbow called on Harris. Well, Travis Ford, who was a transfer in his own right from Missouri to Kentucky, he's got a lot of transfers that are helping this program really get reestablished. Ricky Harris is not one of those guys. Harris is a guy that he recruited, but you know, the transfers have helped him. Gaffney, Brower, and of course Forbes and Dante Milligan, all four have had an impact. And Bonner the same way. Bonner went to West Virginia.
I mean, Tom, as we even look around the Atlantic 10, I had Duquesne last week, and they have a few guys that have transferred. Sean James, particularly from Northeastern, and Kojo Menso transferred from Manhattan. I wonder what Manhattan would have looked like if those two guys had stayed.
I was thinking the same thing, because at that level, I mean, Anderson, C.J. Anderson from Xavier was averaging over 18 points per game as a sophomore. And Menzo was a fantastic defensive player. Second free throw for Brown after making the first, and it's good. And Xavier, a very good free throw shooting team, is starting to climb with its numbers during this game. Now at 71% for the game.
Kojo Mensah actually transferred from Siena.
Oh, excuse me, Siena,
yeah. And but what a difference these guys have made as they even moved up a conference.
Forbes, backdoor pass on the bounce to Brower. A big slam for Brower.
What a nice backdoor cut and a great pass by Forbes.
So 4:25 to play here in the first half. It's just a 7-point lead for Xavier. UMass has done a nice job climbing back into this game. Here's Anderson. No look pass inside to Brown. He kicks it up top to Burrell, who is scoreless so far in this first half. 10 on the shot clock. Anderson works off a screen, trying to find a little bit of an opening. Kicks it up top to Raymond. Here's Burrell. Instead of the three, he puts it on the floor, heads to the hoop, and they say he steps on the baseline.
Now, this is a half-court matchup zone, and I think it's giving the Musketeers a little bit of trouble. They're switching, as you talked about. One of the issues, though, that I think the Minutemen have to do a little bit better is rebound. They have to identify guys and box out. But so far, this changing of defenses has had a positive effect in the last 3 or 4 minutes.
Just noticed that Stanley Burrell 0 for 1 from the floor. He's only taken 1 shot in this first half. And the officials now blow the whistle to stop play. 3:58 left to play in the first half. It's 27-20. Xavier is on top. So a 7-point lead for the Musketeers. They're hanging on against the Minutemen. (27-20) the score. Xavier on top of UMass. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the resurgence of the Atlantic 10. Well, Sean Miller, the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, his team is right at the forefront of that resurgence.
Well, our conference speaks for itself twofold. One, the quality wins that we have non-conference wise before any of us have played each other. I mean, when you look at not one program, not two, but 3, 4, and 5 different programs that have gone out in non-conference play and have established themselves as being able to beat the nation's best teams.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And you see what the non-conference record was this year. And I think more impressively than anything else, John, is the fact that the conference is ranked 7th out of 31, right past the Big Six.
Tom, the conference over the years has taken some shots, especially the last few. But this is as strong as we've seen the Atlantic 10 Conference be in a number of years. You talked about the standings in the very beginning and how balanced it is, but aside from that, the statement really, the proof statement is, how do you do against the so-called higher-ranked conferences, the schools that have big-time football? And I think the Atlantic 10 this year has done admirably against some of those ranked teams.
Well, Xavier alone has beaten Indiana, Cincinnati, Kansas State, and Auburn. We've seen UMass beat Boston College and Syracuse so far this season. They've also beaten a Houston team that at the time only had 1 loss when they came in here to the Mullins Center. Matt Glass checks out of the ball game for UMass. Xavier with the ball and a 7-point lead with 3:39 to play here in the first half.
I think that the league got together with some of the coaches and the athletic directors and said, you know, we have to just upgrade our schedule so we can make a stronger claim at the end of the year for at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. And as a consequence, I think the league is now in position to get 3 or 4 bids. Certainly that wasn't the case a year or 2 ago.
Jamie Luckey, who's the referee in today's ball game, is explaining to Travis Ford and Sean Miller that they're going to go with the clock that's above the backboards, because the one on the big scoreboard behind the seats, behind the backboards, now that one's just not rolling right now. So 27-20 the score, Xavier on top. The clock that you see in your picture is on right now. 3:20 to play here in the first half. Shot clock is at 15 for the Musketeers. Here's Duncan, gave up a 3, dribbles in, mid-range shot is blocked, but it's taken out of the air by C.J. Anderson. I'm not sure he realizes there's only 5 on the shot clock. Raymond fakes a 3, puts it on the floor, pulls out, gets some space, and his 3 no good. Duncan with the rebound, and it's knocked out of bounds.
Good, solid defensive possession there by UMass. They did a good job of making it difficult for the Musketeers to get an open look.
And let's face it, if they get a bucket here, they're within 5, and the way this game has flowed, they have to feel pretty good about themselves if they're within 5.
Absolutely. When you think about it, some of their leading scorers have just not gotten off track.
Derek Brown with the steal inside.
Ricky Harris only has 2 points so far in the first half, and they're certainly right there, Tom.
Well, we talked about the Musketeers. Stanley Burrell, who's about to check back into the ball game, he has only taken 1 shot. He has no points either.
Well, that's the good and the bad part of being so balanced. Sometimes guys that are capable of getting you double digits just don't get enough shots.
C.J. Anderson with a nice post-up move inside against Gary Forbes in the zone, and he gives Xavier a 9-point lead. C.J. Anderson, who has 971 career points combined between Manhattan and Xavier, will reach the 1,000-point mark at some point this year. He will do that. So will Josh Duncan. Duncan, who is right on the doorstep of 960 career points, should also reach the 1,000-point mark this season. There's Josh Duncan as he takes a seat.
What a great guy to bring off the bench. I mean, this is a guy who can start for any other team in the conference, and he comes off the bench and gets you double digits almost every night.
Chris Lowe to the free throw line. A 1-and-1 opportunity. He was the first recruit by Travis Ford to commit to UMass when Travis was signed, and he misses that free throw attempt. And right now UMass 4 of 7 from the line.
You look at UMass right now with 20 points, you're saying, how did that happen? Because they're averaging 80 a game. Well, I think 2 things. One is the Musketeers are doing a terrific job in the half court defensively, and secondly, they're not turning the basketball over, giving UMass transition scoring opportunities.
Gary Forbes tips that pass out of bounds, so with 11 on the shot clock, the Musketeers will maintain possession. As we mentioned the other night, UMass in their loss to St. Joseph's, they struggled offensively in the first half as well, and then came to life in the second half. After some adjustments by Travis Ford, and plus some one-on-one work by Gary Forbes and Ricky Harris.
Well, I think you're going to see Ricky Harris really start to try to take over in the second half. He's not going to finish the game with 2 points.
Shot clock is down to 3. Burrell, line drive 3, no good. Brown with the rebound and a fresh 35 for the Musketeers. Lavender with the 3 attempt. No good. Forbes with the rebound, nearly lost it. Xavier now 2 for 13 from outside the arc. Low with very little spin. His jumper falls a little short, and Love takes down the rebound. Lavender presses up the floor. 1:10 and counting left to play here in the first half.
So far, the pace very much favors the Musketeers. They're a team that scores in the 60s, and right now this game is playing out the way they want it to.
It's a beautiful pass from Derek Brown to Love inside. Boy, he just found him against that zone, just floating underneath the basket.
Well, if you make a mistake defensively against Xavier, they're going to make you pay. And this is a terrific pass here. As you can see, just rolling to the basket. The Minutemen don't pick up. Jason Love has just an easy basket.
Hey, coming up on NCAA basketball at the half, Greg Amsinger heads down to Temple with Deontay Christmas and Mark Tyndall to check out the Philly cheesesteaks, plus first half highlights and statistics. 42.8 to play, and there you see what's coming up at halftime. Deontay Christmas and Mark Tyndale both had good games last night for the Temple Owls in their loss to St. Joseph's, and both, I think, John, are two of the more improved players. And I know Christmas led the A-10 in scoring last year, but watching his game last night, he's gotten stronger, he's gotten better conditioned, and I think all of that has led to a successful year.
Well, I think also their decision-making is better. I think they're starting to really buy into the Fran Dunphy way of looking at the game.
Shot clock is down to 20. Game clock is at 27 seconds. There you see it in your bottom left corner. And Xavier's just going to hold it for one final shot. UMass, though, will get the ball back. Shot clock under 10. Lavender working against Correa. Off the screen set by Brown. Finds Raymond for an open three. And Raymond does get the friendly roll off the rim. And Xavier has a 14-point lead, 34-20. Low, off-balance shot is good. It's a three-pointer right at the buzzer. Sean Lowe, the official on the near side, signaled three, but I think the officials might take a look to see where Chris Lowe was. But that was a beautiful body control by Lowe after the three by B.J. Raymond gave Xavier a 14-point lead.
Yeah, B.J. Raymond, one of the best three-point shooters in the conference, gets that friendly roll like you said, Tom. And how about Lowe? How quickly he pushes the ball down the court. A bit off balance, but he had to force the shot. And again, he just finishes. You're going to see Chris Lowe, Forbes, and Harris be more active offensively in the second half.
34-23, Xavier on top, and Sean Miller, the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, joins us right now. Coach, what did you like from the first half? What didn't you like?
Well, I thought Derek Brown did a great job for our team, and one of the reasons we're up 11 points, I think, is just his overall play, both on offense and defense.
I thought from an active standpoint, you're right about that, Sean, and I also thought Drew Lavender really had a good first half, too, running this offense.
You know, Drew's really important to us. When we usually play well, you can really point to him leading our team, and we have to do a better job of recognizing UMass's change in defenses, and Drew will be a big part of that in the second half.
All right, Sean, good luck in the second half. Thanks for joining us. Sean Miller, the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers. We saw B.J. Raymond's three, and then we also saw Chris Lowe answer with a three of his own that finished up this first half. It's 34-23, Xavier on top. NCAA basketball at the half coming up in just a few moments. 34-23, Xavier is on top of UMass at the end of our first half, and really you look at what Xavier has done this year. Today, it's more about the defense than anything else, John Griffin, against the UMass Minutemen.
Well, Tom, in the very beginning, we talked about the Musketeers having to defend Ricky Harris and Gary Forbes, and they've done that. They've really shut down the two leading scorers, really, in the Atlantic 10 Conference. So the half-court defense for the Musketeers has been exceptional, and that's something Sean Miller is going to certainly concentrate on in his halftime talk to his team.
Well, the Xavier Musketeers are a very good three-point shooting team. They've struggled somewhat in the first half from outside the arc, but there have been some impressive individual plays, and Drew Lavender, I thought, had a very good first half.
Yeah, very solid in terms of his scoring and distributing the basketball, and he certainly got some help from his front-court mate in Derek Brown. That human highlight film, one of the more athletic players in the Atlantic 10 Conference. Now, in the offensive end for UMass, it was more like Chris Lowe and some other players like Luke Bonner, but it's not been Ricky Harris and Gary Forbes. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can get off track offensively in the second half.
Well, it seemed like Xavier was going to run out to a 14-point lead at the end of the half on that three by B.J. Raymond, but Chris Lowe answered with a three of his own, and that turned out to be a big shot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for me to see in the second half, especially if a guy like Stanley Burrell can get off offensively. If you're Sean Miller, you got to be really happy with an 11-point lead and Stanley Burrell having not scored.
Well, you see the numbers. The three-point shooting for both teams really has been down in this first half. Xavier 3 of 15. UMass, meanwhile, 3 for 11. The second half, UMass and Xavier is coming up in just a few minutes. (34-23), Xavier on top of UMass. Well, UMass really has had a resurgence over the last couple of years under head coach Travis Ford, but everything is built around that 95-96 season when Marcus Camby led the Minutemen to the Final Four.
Well, Tom, I remember this team all too well. I left St. Joe's in 1995, so I had more than my share of seeing Marcus Camby waking me up in the middle of the night with nightmares. This was a fantastic team. John Calipari built a fantastic program here at UMass, and this is a team that got to the Final Four, and I don't think it'll be hard to duplicate that. You know, when you have such a perfect season, and you can see the turnaround that Travis Ford has made here in those last 2 seasons, but certainly if that becomes the measuring stick, it's a tall task.
Well, the Mullins Center here used to be loaded to capacity when that team played, and they built this place basically off of that team, and today's actually a pretty decent crowd.
Yeah, I think the attendance has certainly picked up. Travis Ford has done a terrific job going into the dorms and getting the students to come out, and there you see some of those postseason teams here. 7-1 this season at home and outscoring teams 84-75.
Well, they're going to have to do a little bit of work to get to that 84 total.
And I can talk about the Curry-Hicks cage for those folks that remember UMass basketball going back into the early 90s before they had the Mullins Center. John Calipari started building this program at the Curry-Hicks cage and had, again, more than my share of butt kickings in the Curry-Hicks cage in the Mullins Center.
John Calipari has had himself a very good year with Memphis. They won yesterday against Gonzaga, so they continue their undefeated string and their #1 ranking in the country. Xavier with the ball to begin the second half. Stanley Burrell has it up top. He is scoreless so far in this game. We said that he's tied with James Posey for 16th place all time at Xavier in scoring, and he may pass James Posey in just a moment as he goes to the free throw line.
What a great history and tradition at Xavier when you think of all the former players, not only great scorers, but the great rebounders in the Musketeer history.
And also the great coaches as well.
Yeah, terrific. And, you know, we'll talk about this maybe a little bit more later, but the success that they've had in the Atlantic 10 Conference since joining.
Burrell, a 90% free throw shooter, misses the first, gets the second, and now he's all alone in 16th place. He just passed James Posey with that free throw. 1,456 points for Burrell, and that's a pretty good name to go right past James Posey, the NBA player who had an outstanding career with the Musketeers. And Burrell, who was only one of 3 players in the history of Xavier University to lead the team in scoring as a freshman. And it's just continued on throughout his career.
What I like about his game this year, though, Tom, is how he's improved his defense.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that everybody, I think, has come to respect about his growth as a more complete player. Great job he did this past week on Brian Roberts, and he's done it Chris Lofton.
Well, Sean Miller has kept an eye on Stanley Burrell over the years, and you know, he's a perfectionist. He's a kid who keeps on working, and this past summer, Sean Miller text messaged Stanley Burrell when Burrell was working out, trying to get himself better, not only shooting the 3, but also on his defense, and said, hey, listen, make sure that you enjoy the moment. I'm paraphrasing, but he was basically telling him, enjoy the moment, enjoy the time that you have right now on the floor, whether it be working out or with the club itself.
Yeah, I think that's a critical issue. I mean, I tell my sons that all the time because this is a very limited period in your life where you can come to a game and have people come and actually pay to watch you play. That doesn't last very long. And some of the players that played here at UMass last year, when I think about how Travis Ford has adjusted the way he's played, he had some great low post players, and Lasme and Freeman, and those guys are fortunately playing basketball after college.
Shot clock is at 10. Brown recognizes, goes to Anderson along the baseline. He's going to force a shot, but before he does that, he's going to travel. So Dante Milligan with good defense on C.J. Anderson. 10-point lead for Xavier. UMass has had trouble today because Gary Forbes and Ricky Harris have been held to just 6 points, and they average more than 40 points per game.
Again, that's testimony and a credit to the half-court defense of the Musketeers. They're just not giving Forbes and Harris good looks.
Well, Forbes will go to the free throw line and try to finish a 3-point play as he draws the foul on that beautiful bank shot.
This is a good example of the versatility of Gary Forbes. He just made this happen. I mean, he was guarded closely, he puts the ball on the floor, 2 good dribbles going to the basket, off-balance shot, using the glass, he makes the field goal and gets to the foul line.
Gary Forbes, who in the game against St. Joseph's, the last game for UMass, had 19 second-half points, and a lot of that, John, was basically one-on-one basketball. They just cleared it out and said, Gary, just go to the hole. He cuts this lead to 7 with that made free throw. 35-28 the score as we head toward the 18-minute mark here in the second half. Anderson from the free throw line against Gaffney. He's got the speed on Gaffney, and he gets the roll on Gaffney.
Matchup zone by UMass in the half court, and the Musketeers are just trying to attack from the center.
I was just about to say that I thought Gary Forbes might have been forcing a shot there, but that was just great hand control going to the cylinder.
Well, when you know that you can get 20 points a game, you're going to figure out how to do it. You might have a slow start, but you're going to find a way to get your 20.
Love with the beautiful putback from Drew Lavender's missed shot. Right place, right time for Jason Love. Love, a kid out of Philadelphia. Forbes to the basket, leaves it down low for Milligan, who will reset the offense for a moment. Low with a spin move inside, and I think he saw Etienne Brower standing up on the bench, and I think he thought that Brower was going to be an open man. And very interesting to watch that whole reaction there. Here's Love, who settled in for that putback, and he sliced right through the paint.
Yeah, Lavender does a good job of reading the defense, and I just like the way Love positions himself for that offensive rebound. Here's a guy that just really takes himself out of the play sometimes to just be around the missed field goal. I don't know if you saw it, Tom, on the last situation. Travis Ford was so upset with Love that when the ball came out of bounds to him, he just slammed it on the ground, and the ball went into about the 8th row. Now, I'm actually surprised the officials didn't call a technical foul, but I think to their credit, Travis Lowe was not in any way frustrated with the officials' call. It was more just simply a reaction to the turnover.
Lavender starts the offense for the Musketeers. He finds Love inside, who finds Burrell outside. Good passing by the Musketeers. Unselfish play to find Derek Brown.
UMass in that half-court matchup zone. There's some opportunities to penetrate and make a play. And I think the Musketeers doing a terrific job of not just settling for the first shot, but actually attacking from the interior. Here's a good block by Brown, and again, you didn't see the slam, if you will, on the sideline by Travis Ford, but he was very frustrated with the decision-making of Chris Lowe.
Gary Forbes is going to force his way to the basket. Here's what John Griffin was talking about during the last offensive set by UMass, and that's the result of an errant pass to the sidelines.
Well, again, Travis Ford very upset with Lowe. He's a very, very intense guy. It certainly has made a difference bringing that intensity to his club, but frustrated with Chris Lowe on that decision-making.
Forbes with 9 points, misses the first free throw. He'll get 2 here as the Musketeers lead it by 11, 41-30. Seemed like Travis Ford, as he was walking down the bench, was also working Dante Milligan. You can see is sitting behind Travis Ford right there. And I'm not sure if it was the pass that Milligan made up top to Chris Lowe before the errant pass to the sidelines.
I think that Travis Ford really understands how challenging this conference is. I mean, he has a good team. He's got some veteran players, certainly in a guy like Forbes. But as you mentioned at the very beginning, there's no margin of error. In order to finish in the top 3 or 4 of this conference, you have to win at home. And what separates number 1 from number 8 is just 1 or 2 games.
Oh, we mentioned it before, the fact that UMass has lost just 1 game here at the Mullins Center, and it came against St. Joseph's. They lost to St. Joseph's twice. Lavender in transition to Burrell, who was able to get the body control and lay it in and force a timeout by UMass. It's a 14-point Xavier lead, 45-31, as Drew Lavender leads the break to Stanley Burrell. Well, you know, the Xavier Musketeers have had a fantastic history, particularly over the last 25 years. They've reached the NCAAs in 17 of the last 25 years. But also, as you look at Stanley Burrell, a senior for Xavier, since 1986, all 70 seniors that have been in the program have graduated. There's an awful lot to say about that because there's been so many guys that have gone out to the NBA that have come back to make sure that they got their degrees.
Well, when you compete at such a high level, and we can get into a discussion all day long about what mid-major means, And certainly that's been the topic of conversation over the last couple of weeks. But this is an upper-level basketball program that compete with just about anybody in the conference and the country. When you win 20 games a season over 25 years and you graduate that many players, it really speaks to the culture of the athletic department as well as the university.
Culture about the athletic department, but also the coaches, whether it be Pete Gillen, to the late Skip Prosser, to Thad Matta, to Sean Miller now. I mean, it says an awful lot for the work that they've done also.
Yes, I agree with you. And again, if you can educate and play basketball at a very high level, I call that the high wire act of the great Walenda. And you're held accountable as the basketball coach for winning, being nationally ranked, and educating.
Ricky Harris trying to force the issue. His shot no good. Gaffney's follow no good. Lavender with the rebound, his 7th already in the ball game. Lavender, beautiful pass to Burrell, gets his man off his feet, and a little touch off the glass. And Xavier in total control right now, 49-31.
And both parts of that fast break look very simple, like the bounce pass and the pump fake, but they're not. Good players make difficult plays look easy.
So as we head toward the 15-minute mark here in the second half, Gaffney answers with a hook shot along the baseline, 49-33, Xavier on top.
Now, Coach Travis Ford said, forget this half-court defense stuff. We're going to pick you up full court, and he extends his defense from baseline to baseline.
And Drew Lavender attacks that defense. He draws the foul. He'll get 2 free throws, but those free throws will come off of this timeout. Drew Lavender in control of this offense. 49 points for the Xavier Musketeers. They average 78.5 per game, but I think they'll take the way this second half has started because they've been rather aggressive against this UMass defense. Time now to take a look at the A10 Conference Student Spotlight. Jill Quell from Xavier is our honoree. She's a volleyball player. She's a senior with a 3.42 GPA. She was the 2007 A10 Player of the Year. A middle childhood education major from North Royalton, Ohio. Drew Lavender to the free throw line for the Musketeers. Lavender with 8 points so far in this game, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He'll get 2 shots. He misses the first. And it's kind of odd to see Drew Lavender scuffle from the free throw line because he's right around 90% for the season.
He's going to be one of those guys that Coach Sean Miller just can't replace. When you think of their backcourt between Stanley Burrell and Drew Lavender, and you might argue that you have a bunch of younger players coming in, you just can't replace the experience, the poise, the confidence, and kind of the culture that these guys have helped to create for this basketball team.
And although he's not the same kind of player, the transfer of Johnny Wolf to UNC Wilmington kind of hurt the depth of that point guard position for the Musketeers. That's why Burrell has played a lot of the point as a backup. Max Groby with that 3 in the game for the first time for the Minutemen. Brown finds Burrell, gives up the 3, takes the mid-range jumper. It's no good. And B.J. Raymond's going to be called for the over-the-back on Matt Glass.
Well, that's a good sign. Coach Travis Ford is trying to find the right combination, so he brings in Max Groby, the freshman, the 6'4" player from Miami Beach, Florida. He's a very good long-range shooter, and that time, a lot of confidence, no hesitation, drains the 3.
Glass is also a 3-point shooter. He's in the game, as we mentioned. He's trying to free himself and now has the ball left sideline. Nice bounce pass to Gaffney, who finds Correa for 3. No good. Burrell with the rebound. 1 on 3. He doesn't have numbers, so he'll wait for his teammates, and then he'll give it off to Lavender.
Well, interestingly, right now, Ricky Harris is on the sideline, as well as Gary Forbes. So he's going to give these guys a few minutes to just take a look at the game and see if he can find something, a solution with some of the younger players.
A little teardrop by Drew Lavender. Very little spin, but it was a pretty move to the baseline. Chris Lowe is also on the bench. So it's Correa, Groby, along with Brower, Glass, and Tony Gaffney in the game for the Minutemen. Whistle blows and a hold called against the Musketeers. It's going to go against B.J. Raymond, I believe. So the first personal foul for B.J. Raymond.
I think it's always interesting when a coach decides to kind of reshuffle his lineup and put his stars on the sideline, like you mentioned, Lowe, Harris, as well as Forbes, and give these younger guys a chance to make a difference, because you ask yourself, hey, the stars aren't doing it. What is it going to hurt me to bring these other younger guys in the game, give them some quality minutes? Maybe they'll do something positive, and they'll inspire my seniors or my upperclassmen to get back in the game and make a difference.
And maybe they won't think as much either. They're just playing free right now. Brower with 7 points so far in the game. 66% from the free throw line. And the first one is good. Played 51 games at Boston University. He's one of the captains for this Minutemen squad. He, along with Tony Gaffney, both transferred from BU. Second shot by Brower. It's good. So it's a 14-point game, 52-38.
Full court pressure, trapping on the first pass, trying to create a turnover, wanting to up-tempo this game and create some opportunities in transition.
Now, we talked about the number of points that UMass averages. They're second in the league in scoring, just under 85 points, and it's partly because of the pressure that they put on defensively. Their style of play, which is very different from last year when they had the player of the year in the A-10 in Stefan Lasme and Rayshawn Freeman, both of whom are playing professional basketball now. Anderson with 6 on the shot clock does get the shot to go off the fingertips of Brower. So a 16-point lead for the Musketeers. And a travel called on Correa. And that was all process of trying to get the pass to Brower on the left sideline, but Brower cut toward the hoop, and by the time Correa realized that, he already had dragged his foot.
I'm looking at UMass, and there's the turnovers. You can see 13 on the part of UMass. But right now, the guys that are in the game for UMass have picked up their communication, their energy level, their vocal. They're playing this half-court matchup zone. And in order to make that work, Tom, you really have to communicate. Players have to kind of pass one offensive player off to another, and they're sliding well, they're communicating. But on the other end of the court, I think Xavier's doing a terrific job of attacking the inside, the interior of this half-court matchup zone.
Well, I think it's all part of being not a senior-dominated team, but a team that's dominated with experienced players overall.
Yeah, as well as discipline, because they have shots on the perimeter, and they're just not settling for that. They want to score by looking in the lane first.
Papa Lowe is in the game for the first time for UMass. Matt Glass with the rebound. Correa up the floor on the near side. And you see the numbers right now for the Minutemen. 33% from the floor on 13 of 39 shooting. Normally, they are 7th in the conference in shooting. But they would be at the bottom with the totals they have today. Sean Lowe, the official.
6 men on the court there.
They just got in the way.
It looked like Xavier had a fast break, but one of the officials was in the way here. An errant pass, good anticipation by Brown, but again, not happy with one of the officials being in his pathway. Almost an offensive foul.
Brower for 3 draws the foul. Duncan's going to be called for that personal foul. Etienne Brower is the only upperclassman that's on the floor right now for the Minutemen. 54-38 the score. Under 12 minutes to play here in the second half. Still a comfortable lead for the Minutemen, or for the Musketeers. Oh, Xavier has really dispersed the scoring around. They got a couple guys in double digits. In fact, they have 3. Stanley Burrell is heading that way. He's got 5 points this afternoon. But, John, he has played very well defensively.
Yeah, sometimes he doesn't get enough credit for it. I think people are starting to recognize it. But he has certainly stepped up his scoring in the second half with 5 second-half points. And he's one of those leaders on this club, whether he scores or he defends. He was the MVP in the game against Dayton. That's a big event in the Ohio area. He was the Blackburn-McCafferty winner of that game. But what a great season he's had. What a great career he's had at Xavier Musketeers.
Well, he had 13 points in that game against Dayton, but I think the real reason he was the MVP of that ball game against the Flyers was just the work that he did against Brian Roberts, who was dehydrated in the second half, but he really held Roberts in check. First of 3 free throws for Etienne Brower, and he misses the first one. Again, he'll have 2 more. He was fouled by Josh Duncan on a 3-point attempt. And the second shot is good for Brower.
Brower's a guy that started the first 15 games. He's been coming off the bench. He's a good 6th man, but he's a guy that's very capable of getting 10 points a game.
Well, he makes 2 of 3 free throws there. Back into the ball game is Chris Lowe. Gary Forbes is going to check back in as well. and so is Ricky Harris. So the three impact players sat for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, as the freshman got some time. But now Travis Ford has put them back into the lineup.
Well, I think sometimes it changes your perspective when you're a player and you're a starter and you're a key guy, and things aren't working out, and you have to sit on the sideline for a couple minutes, and you see your teammates trying to make a difference. You get fired up when you get back into the game, and you want to make some headway. You want to close this gap. It's a 14-point deficit with a little over 11 minutes to go.
Papa Lowe forced that tie-up. That's what he can do. He can block some shots. He's been slowed by some food poisoning, which is why his minutes have diminished over the last handful of games. He also has a sore left wrist. It's all taped up. He fell in practice a couple weeks ago. So Papa Lowe and getting a chance to play here, and a very active guy who they think is just going to get better and better because he's so long and so quick.
Well, if you want a shocking statistic, he has 18 block shots in 66 minutes of play. So kind of extrapolate that over a period of a whole game, and this is one of the better shot blockers in the league.
Brower with his second three of the afternoon. He has 14 points. And it's now an 11-point Xavier lead, so UMass is cutting into this deficit.
Well, you talked about the comeback just this past week against St. Joe's in the last 10 minutes of the game. Maybe they can mount the same kind of charge here this afternoon.
UMass a 5-0 run. Lavender with the ball, trying to slow things down for the Musketeers offensively. 11 minutes left to play here in the second half. C.J. Anderson between the rings. Shot clock winds close to 10. Shot blocked by Lowe, out of bounds. He doesn't look slowed by any kind of food poisoning.
Gary Forbes just gave him a high five. He's just inspired. He's helping this defense because you can see that the Musketeers want to try to attack closer to the basket. C.J. Anderson went to the hoop, but again, you have the presence there of a guy somewhat lean, but a long arm reach there and making a difference in terms of changing shots.
Xavier just got a break. The shot clock was at 9, but the inbounds pass was kicked, so they'll reset it to 15 as they take the inbounds play. Burrell tries to go to Lavender. It's stolen by Forbes, but he falls out of bounds. I believe the shot clock will stay at 10. I don't think it'll reset. There was no change of possession.
I think the defense for UMass has just started to pick up again. You saw a nice block by Papa Lowe, and then you see a good job of Gary Forbes anticipating the passing lane.
Shot clock is down to 5 as Lavender rolls to the left side. Now 2, tried to draw the foul, and he couldn't, but his shot rolls off the rim. Anderson with the rebound and the putback, and I believe he is fouled. Let's wait and see. Are they going to say that he just dropped that ball out of bounds? Jamie Lucky just gave the bench a warning. See Lavender's shot. He was trying to draw the foul, but Lowe just went to his left.
Yeah, he avoided the foul. Good decision on the part of Lowe.
And there's no foul. The ball just went out of bounds. So fresh 35 for Xavier. That's a break.
Yeah, a couple breaks just went Xavier's way. We saw Gary Forbes that looked like he potentially had a fast break. He stepped on the out-of-bounds line.
Duncan posts up against Harris. There was a size mismatch there, and Brower fouls him as he catches the ball with some help defense.
Foul on 22, NCAA Brower.
That's the second foul for Brower, and it's the 15th foul. They're going to say Duncan was in the act of shooting, so he'll go to the free throw line.
Well, again, Duncan's one of those perimeter players, but I think the coaches are very happy when he goes into the lane and tries to make strong plays to the basket.
Well, he's got 5 points. All 5 have come from the free throw line this afternoon. DJ Raymond checks back in for C.J. Anderson. And now the second shot by Duncan. Trying to make this a 13-point lead for Xavier. And it's good. The fact that Xavier's controlled this ball game with a double-digit lead, and the fact that they've held UMass to just 43 points. UMass averages over 84 points per game, and has kept this crowd kind of quiet this afternoon.
Sure has. And Tom, no surprise when you look at that scoring today, why Xavier is #1 in the Atlantic 10 Conference for scoring defense, allowing opponents to only 62 points a game.
Sean Miller's squad has been very consistent throughout this season with that kind of style of play. She said Sean Miller was an outstanding player at the University of Pittsburgh. His dad, a longtime high school coach at Blackhawk High School outside of Pittsburgh. John Griffin was talking about how Sean Miller could handle the ball. And he used to go with his dad to different high schools when he was young and put on different dribbling shows at halftime of those games.
Absolutely. I remember him coming to a couple camps that I worked at, he and his younger brother, and they put on a clinic, and the young campers were just amazed. These guys at the time were 12, 13 years old, how proficient they were at handling the basketball. Tom, I just want to check myself. Xavier Musketeers are number 2 in the conference in scoring defense at 62 points a game.
Yes, St. Louis is number 1. Rick Majerus has got his team playing good defense despite the fact that they're struggling to score points throughout this year. In fact, St. Louis struggled to score points against GW this year to the tune of just 20 in one ball game against the George Washington Colonials.
Had a good win yesterday.
Yeah.
They scored 81 against a LaSalle team. They beat LaSalle 81-74.
A couple of good wins yesterday. Charlotte got a victory yesterday, so they sit atop the A10 with Xavier and St. Joseph's. Xavier with the ball, 17 on the shot clock, 9:40 and counting to play here in the second half. Lavender works off the screen, 10 on the shot clock. He finds Brown, left corner, left open to take that three. No good. Rebound on the weak side by Forbes. Forbes brings the ball up the floor himself. A crossover to get some space. Now to Harris. Harris has not shot well today. He shoots and gets fouled there. Stanley Burrell is called for the foul, so Harris will get 2.
Stanley Burrell was in good position. He stayed right in front of Harris. He really didn't have to foul. I think he's a bit upset at himself because he's been making Harris work hard all afternoon to get a good look.
Ricky Harris held to just 2 points so far today, and he remains at 2 as he misses the first free throw. This is a 73% free throw shooter. He's 28th in the country at 20.7 points per game, and second to Deontay Christmas of Temple in scoring in the A10.
He's only taken 5 shots. He's a guy that probably is going to take between 15 and 20 shots a game, Tom.
Well, he just took the game against St. Joseph's on his shoulders. He and Gary Forbes. He would sit in the corner and made 1 3 after another, and Forbes would just charge to the basket. And with 9 minutes left to play, 9:05 left to play, UMass is going to need that kind of production as there's a foul away from the ball. An illegal screen called against the Musketeers.
Musketeers foul on 31, Jason.
Xavier likes to use a double screen sometimes and run their players off of the double screen, and that time they just didn't hold their position. They moved in the path of the defensive player, creating the offensive foul.
Harris draws the foul as it goes to the hoop. We talked about the fact that Ricky Harris is second in the A10 and scoring behind Deontay Christmas. There's a log jam up top, just a percentage point or 2 that separates the leaders, as Lemeyer Goldwire of Charlotte is also above 20 points per game. There's Harris and Forbes. They combine to score more than 40 points per game, but they have pretty much been held in check in this afternoon's game, although Forbes has now reached double digits. He's at 10.
I think you're going to see Ricky Harris here in the remainder of the game, the last 9 minutes or so, just try to push the ball to the basket and try to get his points on the foul line.
Well, he'll go to the foul line here because Jason Love was just called for his 5th personal foul. Love fouls out with 8 points. It's been a tough day for not only Chris Lowe, who has struggled somewhat, Ricky Harris has struggled somewhat, and Gary Forbes has struggled somewhat, but even the other players have struggled to kind of find their rhythm this afternoon.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody right now that's been stepping up offensively for the Minutemen. They're shooting about 35% from the field, 35% from the three-point line. I mean, they just haven't been able to get anything going, and even when the Musketeers have turned the ball over, it hasn't resulted in transition basket opportunities.
UMass has turned the ball over 14 times, 12 times for Xavier. As we mentioned, Jason Love is fouled out with 8 points. He was the one who fouled Ricky Harris, so that means Josh Duncan's minutes will increase for the final 8:55, and they've got a 10-point game. It's 56-46, so well within reach for UMass if they get some stops defensively.
I think that's going to be one possession at a time on the defensive end.
Below with some help defense outside. He's remained in the game, playing that middle for the Minutemen. Shot clock is at 15 for the Musketeers. B.J. Raymond to Stanley Burrell, trying to find Josh Duncan inside. He finds him outside instead with 5 on the shot clock. Duncan gets Papalo off his feet, draws the foul. as the shot rolls off the side of the rim. Well, that was really the speed and the strength of Josh Duncan that got the shot, but some pretty good defense by UMass before the shot.
Yeah, I think so, and Papa Lowe is very active, but I think the difference is Lowe is a freshman, and he's just not experienced enough to play against this fifth-year player in Josh Duncan. Josh Duncan can take you away from the basket, he can score in the low post, he can put the ball on the floor, and I think in that last sequence where he wanted the basketball, he really got Papa Lowe off balance.
Well, he's got 7 points, all 7 from the free throw line. And his second shot is good, making 8 points for Josh Duncan. C.J. Anderson will check in for Duncan. So that means Xavier's going to go small against this UMass squad. Now, Papa Lowe is 6 feet 9 inches plus, but Xavier's got the speed to sort of counter that size.
He's not really a threat offensively, so you don't have to worry about matching up with him in the low post with somebody his size or bigger.
Nice kiss off the glass by Gary Forbes. Again, it's a 10-point lead for Xavier with 8:05 and counting left to play here in the second half. Man-to-man full court press by the Minutemen. It's broken by Xavier, but then a bad pass up top by Derek Brown into the hands of Ricky Harris. So we've got a timeout on the floor. 7:56 to play here in the second half. UMass is showing some life. They're within 10, 58-48.
Greetings.
Xavier on top by 10, 58-48. Gary Forbes has started to show some semblance of offensive life in this second half. In fact, Forbes overall has 12 points to go, along with 5 rebounds. He still seems like he's forcing some shots, John, but maybe they need him to force some shots.
Well, he's good enough to create his own shot, Tom. His percentage isn't all that great, but he's very aggressive when he goes to the basket. He can generally draw the foul. He's only 4 for 11 from the field, but he's gotten to the foul line 8 times. So he's a guy that can manufacture points, and if anybody's going to bring this team back, it's going to be Gary Forbes and his teammate Ricky Harris.
Yeah, Forbes is 4 for 8 from the free throw line so far in this game, and that's kind of an oddity since he's at 72% for the season. So his team was within 10, 58-48. You see Gary's going to inbound, so that means UMass has the ball off this timeout.
Well, every possession's important for UMass at both ends of the court. This sequence, obviously, they want to get a good shot. They have time to set up a play after the timeout. Be interesting to see what they run here.
Well, man-to-man defense by Xavier. Nice screen by Papa Lowe. Frees Ricky Harris, but a bad pass to the right block, and it's cut off by Xavier into the hands of C.J. Anderson.
Good rotation to the ball by the Musketeers, because it seemed, as you said, that UMass had an advantage, but that's, I think, reflective of their team defense. They do a good job of reading where there's a need, and guys rotate from their man to stopping the ball.
Yeah, and it's not only with the number of points that the Musketeers allow per game, but it's also the statistical numbers. You know, the field goal percentage, the 3-point field goal percentage. Shot clock is down to 5.
Rebound margin.
Brown finds Anderson with that extra pass down low, and he's fouled by Papa Lowe with 1 on the shot clock. So that means C.J. Anderson will get 2.
This is just great team basketball. We talked about team defense. That's just great, unselfish offensive basketball, because a number of guys could have taken that shot, but again, they make the extra pass. C.J. Anderson goes to the foul line, but very, very easily Derek Brown could have shot that ball from the foul line. 3
different scorers are in double digits for Xavier in this ball game, including C.J. Anderson, who now has 11 points. And he has given Xavier an 11-point lead. Second free throw, no good, but B.J. Raymond with the offensive rebound.
Those are kind of back-breaking plays when you're trying to come back, Tom, with under 7 minutes to go.
Because it could turn into a 3-point or a 4-point play with a made field goal here.
Yeah, in as much as I think UMass has played more inspired basketball, especially since the starters came back into the game. The Musketeers have really just not opened the door and allowed them to get to this, to shrink the lead to under 10 points.
Papa Lowe called for his second straight foul, so Derek Brown will go to the free throw line for 2. And Papa Lowe and Derek Brown had to be talked to by the officials. Seemed like everything was okay as Derek Brown acknowledged him as he headed to the free throw line. So Derek Brown, just a sophomore from Dayton, Ohio, 78% free throw shooter on the season. He misses there. It's kind of interesting to see where Xavier is right now for the free throw line, 19 of 26. Sean Miller's team started slow. They've heated up a little bit from the free throw line, but if they're going to put this ball game away, they've got to be a little more consistent from the free throw line. Second shot, good for Brown.
I think Xavier just kind of wears you out. When you think you have a chance to close the gap, they just start to turn it up defensively. They make the extra pass offensively. They really don't crack. And sometimes over the course of a 40-minute game, you're looking for the opposing team to break somehow, to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And the Musketeers haven't done that.
Etienne Brouwer gets the rebound and then is pushed along the baseline by C.J. Anderson. I guess a lot of that too, John, is because, I mean, you look at the offense, they disperse the scoring around from player to player, but I think that that kind of responsibility helps Sean Miller out even on the defensive end when he tries to talk to his guys about helping defensively.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Sean Miller has done a good job of assembling a team. He was an assistant to Thad Matta, and some of the players maybe have transitioned from his assistant days to the head coaching days. But I think he's gotten a lot of credit around the league and certainly even in the coaching circles around the country for consistency, being, you know, losing 3 good players last year and not seeing the program step backward. He's a young coach with a great future ahead of him, and he's done a fabulous job here with a school with a great tradition. So it's hard to measure up when you think of the previous coaches, but he's certainly taken over the mantle and done a great job.
Oh, he just passed Thad Matta for 8th place all-time in victories at Xavier with 79. Pete Gillen leads the way with 202 career victories as head coach, followed by Skip Prosser. Here's Raymond to the basket. Nice move as he got inside position on a beautiful spin from the high post to the low post, and Ricky Harris just got caught with the ball on his hip. 15 turnovers now for UMass. And Ricky Harris this afternoon has just not found his shot. 5 points overall. As you see, he's second in the A-10 in scoring. And 5 points overall for Ricky Harris, but even beyond that, John, is that he's just 1 for 5 from the floor.
Yeah, he tried to push the ball down the court that time. He had nowhere to go. There were 4 blue jerseys in front of him, and you can just sense the frustration right now of Ricky Harris. He hasn't really faced a defense like this season, and it's been a long afternoon for him.
Well, Drew Lavender just took that ball to the hoop. It was knocked out of bounds, and Sean Miller just called a timeout. So Sean Miller calls a timeout just to try to reestablish the offense with 32 on the shot clock. The Xavier Musketeers, well, it has been a very impressive run in the Atlantic 10 for Xavier. Since the 96-97 season, they've won 269 games, 10 20-win seasons. And individually, they've had some phenomenal players come through the doors.
They've been a great addition to the league. When you think of the Cintas Center, the attendance that they have, the excitement that they bring, the new markets into the state of Ohio, but also the way they've played in terms of postseason play last year, that great game against Ohio State. Yep. They've been a fabulous representative of the conference and a great addition to the league. And again, we talked about their graduation rate, and so they're doing it the right way. It's kind of a complete package.
Well, they, along with St. Joseph's, went to the Elite 8 back in 2004. And that was an impressive run for both of those squads, and maybe more so for Xavier because they ended St. Joseph's winning streak during the A-10 tournament. And they had really a struggle through the regular season. Now we look at the A-10 standings so far this season, and we talked about the fact that Xavier is sitting atop those standings. Charlotte is there as well, and then St. Joseph's. All 3 teams are 4-1, but there's a logjam. Rhode Island, Duquesne, Richmond at 3-2 with a big win over Dayton last night.
How about Richmond, 80-63 over Dayton? So how about Duquesne and the job Ron Everhart's done? And so this league has just gotten better from top to bottom. And there's a great group of coaches in this league that are certainly making an impact at their programs.
C.J. Anderson going to be called for the travel there with 5:50 left to play here in the second half. Well, it is cyclical, isn't it, from a conference standpoint? Not all conferences, but at least from the A-10 standpoint and some of the other conferences.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the league expanding and the effect that that's had, and certainly it's taken a while for Fordham to get things on track, but I think they've shown steady improvement with Derek Witherspoon. And then how about Ron Everhart and the job that he's done at Duquesne? So
Xavier
each program, I think you're seeing some steady progress.
I also think that Bobby Lutz has done a nice job putting a different kind of team on the floor down at Charlotte this year. In fact, it's more of a Bobby Lutz style team that he's put on the floor. Etienne Brouwer will get 2 free throws off of the Xavier foul, and he has lived at the free throw line this afternoon. He makes his first one. He'll get a second one here. Brouwer with 17 points, make it 18 points. As he's now 10 for 11 from the line. Ricky Harris checks back in. Max Groby checks out for UMass.
Tom, the downside of all this, competitive games in the conference with being such a close race is you wonder if this beating up on each other makes it difficult for somebody to have a 26-win season.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers today. I mean, Xavier has a chance to be in the 20s with their victories. Brouwer on a slam dunk, and the pass from Lowe has cut this lead to 8. But you might be right about that, John. It might be difficult for one team just to separate itself from everyone else in the conference. Well, we've got a ball game here. Xavier had some separation against UMass, but now it's just an 8-point game. Josh Duncan thought about the 3, but instead is covered nicely by Dante Milligan as the shot clock is at 15. Stanley Burrell, high post right side, shot no good. Brown with the rebound. He is fouled underneath. Well, Etienne Brouwer slow to get up, but he has certainly had a resurgent second half for the Minutemen. 20 points, including 2 on that slam.
He's a terrific athlete in transition. I mean, you can see how high he elevates. Redshirted freshman, the transfer from Boston University. He's a 10-point-per-game scorer, and he's certainly, his 2 points at that juncture is making a difference. Right now, UMass has closed this gap to within 8. They have to do a better job on the defensive glass and limit the Musketeers to just 1 shot.
Well, Derek Brown misses the first free throw there. He does get 2 as C.J. Anderson checks back in for Josh Duncan. And really, Xavier can ice this game from the free throw line, but they keep trading makes for misses.
Chris Lowe just went into his teammates and said, box out. And I think that's going to be a critical issue for UMass in the last 5 minutes of this game.
9-point lead for Xavier. 4:50 and counting to play. Low to the basket. Nice sweeping move. Aggressive to the hoop. It's a 7-point game.
Full court pressure by UMass here. They need to create a turnover. Trying to deny the ball to Drew Lavender. They want the ball out of his hands. They're trying to trap him in the half court.
Nice screen by Anderson to free Lavender, who's got a clear path to the basket.
I'm not sure how that happened, Tom, because there were 2 guys running at Lavender trying to get the ball out of his hands. Here you can see Lowe, and he's being joined by Brouwer, and they're just trying to find a way to get the ball out of his hands and trap him, and he just penetrates that double team and 3 other guys.
You know, it was the screen by Anderson that freed him across midcourt, and I thought maybe we missed a screen as he went to the basket, but there really wasn't any screen. He just used his speed, his hesitation, and then his speed to go right to the basket.
And again, it's interesting when a guard of his size goes into the low post, he almost freezes the defenders from UMass. They're not really sure what he's going to do, but nobody stood in his path. They were probably thinking he was going to make a pass. They didn't have the nerve to necessarily go in there and lay it up, but he did. The 5'7" guys scored against 3 guys that are a foot taller.
Well, 13 points, 7 rebounds to go along with his 2 assists in today's ball game, and also some pretty good defense. Drew Lavender, who, if you combine his numbers at Oklahoma, where he scored 659 points, is well over 1,200 points for his career as a college ball player. So it's 65-56, Xavier on top. Off this timeout called by the Musketeers, the Minutemen with the ball. 20 on the shot clock. Brouwer, he's had the hot hand. Left corner jumper, no good. Milligan hooking C.J. Anderson. We're going to say C.J. Anderson is the one that'll be called for the foul. So Milligan's going to get a chance to go to the free throw line. Not a very good free throw shooter, as we pointed out before, but he's gotten better as he's become a starter for the Minutemen.
Well, UMass hasn't had a lot of success on the offensive glass, but a key rebound and an opportunity here for Milligan. As we talked about in the last 4 minutes of this game, you just can't trade baskets if you're trying to come from behind here. So it's got to be a score and a stop at the other end for the Minutemen.
Here comes the second shot for Milligan. It's no good. Brown pulls down the rebound. So 65-57 the score. We head toward the 4-minute mark here in the second half. Lavender speeds right past 3 different players along the sideline, and he's pushed out of bounds. So Dante Milligan, I believe, is called for the foul for UMass, and he has just fouled out.
There were 3 guys that time trying to trap Drew Lavender. And he has these afterburners, you know, when he kind of senses that he's being trapped, he just changes his speed, and he's kind of like the road runner, and he just blasts by people, Tom. It's amazing. I'm sure, you know, a football player, a running back has that knack for reading the defense and adjusting his speed to get past people.
I've mentioned this before. Last year, after doing a couple of the Xavier games, whether it be on television or on radio, I watched Drew Lavender in the first half of the season. Like a lot of folks, wasn't overly impressed with his game. It looked like he was a little slow to get involved in the running of this team. And then something happened middle of the season last year, and he turned himself into a difference maker, not only in the offensive end, but also on the defensive end. The clock didn't start as Drew Lavender took that ball under the basket. You see the shot clock sitting at 35, the game clock at 4:07. So a few seconds did not tick off, and that's when Lavender was pushed out of bounds.
Now, I'm sure if you're Coach Travis Ford, you want that clock to stand still. I mean, you don't want that clock to keep moving because you're going to run out of time here with 4 minutes to go in the game.
I think they're trying to decide where the clock should be. It's at 4:02 right now here in the second half, and I'm not sure if they're looking to take some time off that clock or not.
If I'm Coach Travis Ford, I'm going to probably argue that there should be about 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock.
I don't think he's going to win that argument. See where the clock is. 4:08 as the ball is inbounded by Xavier. So it's at least 5, maybe 6 seconds that have to be run down off the clock. And that's what the officials right now, Jamie Luckey, the referee, are talking about on the sideline. Sean Lowe and Mike Eves. Those are the 3 that are conferring right now. Jamie Luckey is the one closest to the scorer's table, and he has finally decided where the clock should be, and we'll wait and see what his decision is. Well, nonetheless, out of this timeout, and they're just going to take 2 seconds off the clock. Drew Lavender is going to go to the free throw line, and he'll get a couple of shots.
When I first started out in coaching and you didn't have so many games on TV where you could check things, I would actually send an assistant coach over to the scorer's table to make sure that guy didn't have a sticky finger.
You get used to the spots, though. You know which guy has a sticky finger and which one doesn't around the league. Second shot by Lavender, no good. Lavender now with 14 points for Xavier. C.J. Anderson has 13. Derek Brown has 12. Xavier with a 66-57 lead as the clock winds down toward 3:45 and counting to play, second half. Still time for the Musketeers to just put this game away. The Minutemen, though, are trying to respond with some threes, and Ricky Harris had that 3 partially blocked by Derek Brown.
Ricky Harris had his hands up. He was calling for the basketball. Felt that Lowe didn't get on the ball necessarily quick enough, but he had to shoot over a much bigger defender who got a piece of the ball.
So Lavender just peeking at this offense. His team on top by 9, 67-57.
Xavier with this experienced team on the court, they're just going to take their time and they're going to use the shot clock as much as possible. And at the end of the shot clock, get the ball in Lavender's hands, split the trap, and get a shot.
Well, he got a good shot. It just didn't go, but he gets his own rebound. He tried to force a bounce pass to Brown as it goes out of bounds. Gary Forbes was fighting for it as well. So 2:55 left to play here in the second half. We've got a foul going into this timeout, and it's a lead for Xavier. 66-57 the score. Xavier's on top. Etty and Brower's done a nice job getting UMass back into this ballgame, but each time that UMass puts a run together, Xavier seems to respond nicely.
I think they settle down. They're just poised and experienced. There's no substitute for that confidence. When they get into the half court, they use the clock as well as anybody, and they don't seem to get rattled.
I mean, part of that is the number of games that these guys have played together, but also the fact that Drew Lavender can take control of the basketball as well and is able to, really reestablish things offensively.
Well, you used the word difference maker, and when I was talking to the coaches of UMass, they were talking about Drew Lavender being that difference maker, and oftentimes you think, hey, it's got to be a big guy, a low post player, a center, but not nearly. It's the smallest guy on the court right now that's the difference maker.
Well, Gary Forbes from the free throw line has scuffled this afternoon. His point total for the afternoon is at 11 points, which is well below his average. Or excuse me, is at 12 points, which is below his average. Second shot is good. (66-58) the score. Xavier on top, 2:50 and counting to play here in the second half. Xavier able to break that press with a long pass from Stanley Burrell.
When you think of trying to make a comeback when you're down, it's very, very difficult when you have to get the ball out of the hands of Stanley Burrell and Drew Lavender. You have two of the most experienced guards in the conference. And when you're the coach and you have a lead with a couple minutes to go in the game and you see these guys on your team, the game is almost over because they're not going to kick it away.
Shot clock is down under 5. Lavender to the hoop. And was able to get enough of a position to get that shot off. Here's a three from Forbes, and it's good. A few steps behind the line. And Travis Ford wants a timeout. 68-61. Xavier on top by 7.
Big time range there by Gary Forbes. A good 3 feet beyond the college three-point line. But again, you can't say enough about Drew Lavender and how he's used this clock and found a way to get the ball to the rim.
Just the fact that he was able to slice his way through the paint, but then as they went back, the Musketeers, Gary Forbes didn't wait. I mean, he was speeding up the floor and took that three very quickly.
One of the few good looks that he's had here this afternoon. That time, again, no hesitation. He pushed the ball down the court. But again, he took about a 23-foot shot there. But Gary Forbes and Ricky Harris just did not have the afternoon that everybody had expected. Still has 16 points, but certainly below his average, and they didn't come easy.
DJ Raymond running the baseline, looking inbound the ball for Xavier. And he has to call a timeout because there was going to be a 5-second violation. Sean Miller wants to squat over to the sidelines. And, when you have a guy like Drew Lavender running this offense, you talked about it, John, you can put the game kind of in his hands to make the decisions at the right time.
Yeah, here's a good example. I mean, he does so many things well. He penetrates, he shoots, he passes. He really gets the defense off balance. He's so difficult to get the ball out of his hand. And when it seems like he has nowhere to go, he can manufacture a basket. I mean, his hang time is pretty amazing. Look at that shot. I mean, I don't know what you call that, a left-handed shot, a right-handed shot.
I think that was a decision on the fly.
Yeah.
He was going to go right, then he decided to go left, and then he just decided to toss it up.
I mean, I don't know if he can play basketball beyond college. I mean, I'd like to think he's good enough, and I don't know if he'll get the opportunity. But he is a fantastic college basketball player.
And the one stat that we kind of lose during this afternoon is the fact that he has 8 rebounds, 1 off his career high. And Xavier having trouble getting the ball across midcourt. Stanley Burrell is called for the travel. And if it wasn't a travel, it may have soon been a 10-second violation.
Good full court pressure defense by UMass. One of the few turnovers by Stanley Burrell and this very experienced backcourt for the Musketeers.
Nice drive by Ricky Harris and a timeout by Travis Ford. It's a 5-point game. UMass, much like their game the other night against St. Joseph's, climbing back in the final minutes of this ball game. It's a 5-0 run for the Minutemen.
Again, good full court pressure defense. Here's Ricky Harris manufacturing a basket. He slices his way between 3 defenders. And now the question is, you're probably going to have to put the Musketeers on the foul line. They're one of the best foul shooting teams in the country. Are they going to be able to hold on long enough and make their foul shots?
Well, Ricky Harris in the last game against St. Joseph's had 26 points in the second half, and he was just firing from the outside. It's taken him a little longer to come to life in this ball game. He and Gary Forbes have combined to score 22 points in this game, much below their average. But if they have a good final 2 minutes, everybody's going to forget about that.
Absolutely. No quitting this team. Good intangibles. When you look at this UMass club, they haven't packed it in. When the starters came back into the game after that 2-minute layoff, they have certainly made a difference.
Boy, Lavender able to break that press with Duncan to find Burrell. Brown goes up, and he's tied up. It's a jump ball, and the possession remains with Xavier with 27 on the shot clock.
Tom, there are 6,000 people in this building who think they're officials, and they called walking. I don't know how you saw it, but it looked like perhaps Brown did shuffle his feet.
A lot of times with these home crowds, they think with their heart, not with their eyes all the time. Here's Stanley Burrell off the inbound, 20 on the shot clock. He finds Lavender, who will reset the offense for the Musketeers.
Sean Miller calling out a play. You really want to get the ball out of Lavender's hands if possible.
Josh Duncan open along the baseline, taking Brower to the basket. Reverse layup is good. Josh Duncan with a big-time field goal along the baseline. Gary Forbes to the hoop, trying to draw the foul and get the bucket. No good. Duncan with the rebound. And the outlet pass to Brown, who leaves it for Raymond, who slams it home rather quietly, but it's somewhat of an emphatic bucket because it makes it 72-63.
And how quickly the game has changed in 2 possessions. Duncan's field goal, Forbes' miss. And UMass, I think, trying to play up the court, as you can see, pressuring the rebound, has nobody back.
Derek Brown is fouled going to the hole. Ricky Harris called for the foul, and Derek Brown is going to go to the free throw line to try to finish off this 3-point play and quite possibly try to finish off this ball game. Josh Duncan with a beautiful individual move against Etienne Brower.
Again, just using that experience, that poise, with a good low post move as he uses the other side of the rim to finish that shot. That was a big play. Forbes missed on the following possession, and then UMass taking a couple chances defensively. The Musketeers recognizing this full court pressure and throwing the ball down the court for 2 easy scoring opportunities. The game changed so fast, Tom, in a matter of 3 or 4 possessions.
Gary Forbes off balance 3, off the side of the rim, rebound by Lavender as the clock continues to wind down in the favor of the Musketeers. 74-63, under 40 seconds to play.
The game went from a 5-point game to an 11-point game in the matter of about 20 seconds. It's going to be a good win for the Musketeers on the road. I think they're establishing their identity, being able to win away from home. For the Minutemen, they're going to have to go on the road now, Tom, and play at Duquesne and at St. Louis.
Yeah, that Duquesne game is kind of interesting just because Ron Everhart's squad is so high-powered, and Drew Lavender with a long-range 3 as the shot clock was winding down. And that is going to do it. The Xavier Musketeers are going to walk away with a 77-65 victory over the Minutemen. 9-1 the last 10 games for Xavier, and this was a rather impressive finish because it was starting to turn over toward UMass.
Yeah, when you look at this score, 77-65, you're going to say, hey, that was a comfortable win on the road. Not really for the Xavier Musketeers. It was close up until the last couple possessions.
77-65, the final score. Xavier has defeated UMass